Hi, I'm Mark, and today on Outside Views, I want to talk about some smokescreen in British politics. The British government is more diverse than any before it. There are 4 women ministers in Rishi Sunak's cabinet, including 2 women that are people of color. So that means people who are not commonly perceived as white by mainstream society. That's Home Secretary Suella Braverman and Trade Minister Kemi Badenoch. And Prime Minister Rishi Sunak describes himself as a proud Hindu and publicly celebrates his faith by visiting Hindu temples or demonstratively lighting the obligatory oil lamps and candles in front of 10 Downing Street for the Diwali Festival of Lights. Minorities are visibly represented in his cabinet, but his government is far from representing the people's interests. On the contrary, the 2 women of color in his cabinet belong to the right-wing fringe of the party and are known as agitators. And the Indian Tamil-born Braverman and Badenoch, who was born in Nigeria, are both Brexit hardliners. Their favorite enemy images are wokeness and migration. So members of minorities can also be racist or sexist. Badenoch became known for a fight against gender toilets and Braverman for tirades against diversity training and refugees. And in Parliament, she railed against woke Terry reading The Guardian and eating tofu. And her greatest dream is, as Braverman recently confessed, was the headline that asylum seekers from Britain would be deported to Rwanda by plane. She punctuated her statement with a hand gesture mimicking an airplane taking off, and quite a blissful smile. It would therefore be premature to celebrate the British government for its diversity. Politically, this diversity is kept within limits that are open to the right. And economically, Prime Minister Sunak represents the interests of the upper 10,000, to which he himself belongs as a multimillionaire. And culturally, he shares the habitus of many British Tories. Sunak is also the richest politician to have ever served as British Prime Minister. That's an aspect that deserves far more attention. His self-portrayal as a Hindu is intended to distract from this and convey down-to-earthness. He might be successful with that, but because a superficial understanding of diversity that ignores political, economic and cultural aspects and attaches itself to externals or to the outside is widespread there. Racism-critical leftists like to refer to politicians like Braverman, Badenoch and Sunak as tokens or as fig leaves for a policy that otherwise relies on exclusion. But that doesn't go far enough because members of minorities can also be racist, sexist and only on their own terms be mindful of their own advantage. And they have found their ideal representatives in Braverman, Badenoch and Sunak. Our societies are becoming more diverse, and this is inevitably reflected in many institutions. And in order to reach new target groups, companies advertise themselves with diverse models, which usually means that they differ in terms of their skin color and other physical characteristics. The media put diverse moderators and journalists in the foreground, or what they call them, or in front of the cameras and give themselves a modern face, and parties strategically reshuffle their bodies accordingly. But this does not change anything in the social structures that exclude certain groups. Today, diversity is too often reduced to gender and ethnic origin or religion and sexual orientation. Classic categories such as social background, education, and income are completely lost out of sight now. Conservatives in particular were often pioneers in the field of symbolic gestures and thus often a step ahead of their competitors. It was the British Tories who, in Margaret Thatcher, brought a woman to the head of government for the first time, and the Union parties provided Germany's first female chancellor. It was Republican George W. Bush who nominated the first 2 black secretaries of state in US history. And it was the right-wing populist Boris Johnson whose cabinets were more diverse than any before him, and who thus promoted the careers of his successors. When left-wing politicians fill their cabinets so strategically, they are often accused of pursuing identity politics and taking group interests into account. And when asked why his cabinet was made up of half women, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, because it's 2015. That wasn't a statement, just a statement of fact. Because diversity is mainstream today. Even the right-wing populist fascists of the AfD rely on diversity. Its partner's leadership is more carefully balanced according to gender, origin and sexual orientation than in any other party. And like other left-wing parties, they have dual leadership. On the one hand, there is the heterosexual East German craftsman Timo Kruppalla, who is rooted in his region, and on the other hand, there is the lesbian West German academic Alice Weidel, who has traveled the world as a management consultant. In the background, party founder Alexander Gauland pulls the strings there, representing the older generation as honorary chairman. There is an identification offer for every voter there, and diversity is still a dirty word for the AfD, and they firmly reject diversity measures. But anyone who is really serious about diversity must implement it at all levels in order to give socially disadvantaged groups such as women, migrants, queer people, workers, and the poor equal rights across the board. And this requires targeted efforts, but I'm against quotas, I'm honest. But still a superficial understanding of diversity that is limited just to the outer view and surface cosmetics only leads to symbolic, fig leaf politics. But as I said, I'm against quotas. There must be other ways to do this, because I already saw that quotas brought parties into trouble. And when I deal with people, I don't look at their gender, except in case when I'm attracted to someone that will not be a woman. Otherwise, I don't look at the gender. I look at their abilities. I don't look at their background, where they're coming from or whatever. No skin color, no religion or whatever. I want to know what they can. And that is the problem. If I had, just for an example, because that doesn't happen that often in my party, if I had a full board, I'm the local chairman of my party as well, if I had a full board of women, I wouldn't care if it's women. If I had a full board of men and no women, that's sometimes the situation. Are people in your membership where you can choose from? Are certain people willing to do the work? It is always work. It's not just having a post. It's work. And so you can't always do this, but you have to give incentives for people to come. Quotas is the wrong point there, though. But just having someone there as a fig leaf to say, well, we are diverse. Well, I'm, as I said, the local chairman of a conservative party. Yeah, I'm the gay local chairman of the Conservative Party. Everybody could say, when they're talking about diversity, that's the big point there. No, nobody here where I live cares for that. I'm the local chairman of that party, period. And nothing else counts. And that's why this like always holding up a placard, we are diverse, that's usually the ones that are not. If it doesn't matter. And it just is the way it is in 2023. That's what's supposed to be. But I'm going far astray now. I'll see you in my next video. If you want to see one right now, there's another one here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.